So this is going to be something a bit different compared to what I normally do on the channel. Um, Basically, Doctor Who is, along with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I'd say, at this point, my favourite show. I absolutely love it. I've been watching it since it came back in 2005, and it just took over my life. It's the first thing I really got properly obsessed with. And I wanted to kind of do more Doctor Who stuff on my channel. But obviously the show's not on at the moment. But it kind of worked out well that some Doctor Who books came out on the 5th of April, I believe it was. They got published, yeah. I will be glancing at notes throughout most of this, so I apologise. But it is on brand because it is a TARDIS notebook, so it's fine. My pen isn't on brand, it's a Harley Quinn's bat from Suicide Squad, but that doesn't really matter. Yeah, anyway, for this kind of video I wanted to do a review of one of the new Doctor Who Target novelisations. So get ready for a bit of backstory. I did some Google research for this, just to provide some context and make it feel like I actually put some effort into this. So basically, some Doctor Who Target novelisations. They were printed between 1973 and 1991, and what they are basically, I'm sure most of you know, they are the TV stories of Doctor Who that have been broadcast in a form of a novel. But obviously, with a novel, you could add new characters or extra scenes and kind of flesh out the whole story in general a bit more. Because obviously, on a TV, you may have to cut things for time, or you don't have the budget to do certain things, but in a book, it's a lot easier to do that. So yeah, between those years, they published a novelisation of every single Doctor Who story at the time, and obviously that was when Doctor Who was off air, at the end of this kind of period. They had novelisations for all of them except The Pirate Planet, City of Death, Sharda, which is the unreleased Doctor Who story that never finished filming. I think it was because of strikes. Resurrection of the Daleks and Revelation of the Daleks. But further research proved that Sharda was released in 2012 by BBC Books. That's available. City of Death was released in 2015 and was re-released again this year with the new cover to blend with these. And also The Pirate Planet was released last year. I'm not sure, I couldn't find anything about Resurrection and Revelation of the Daleks being novelised. I think there are audio versions available, maybe. But I'm sure we'll get them at some point. But yeah, so basically every single classic Doctor Who story, including the TV movie, has been novelised by Target Novels. But when the show came back in 2005, I think there was some kind of rights issues and stuff, and it was announced that they wouldn't be releasing any Target novelisations for the new series, and rights and contract negotiations and all that was the reason those initial stories weren't novelised either. So yeah, basically, rights changed again. BBC Books acquired some new rights and stuff, I think, which allowed them to publish new Who stories as Target novelisations, which is very exciting. And they were all published on the 5th of April this year, so not long ago. And those stories were Rose by Russell T Davies, The Christmas Invasion by Russell T Davies, The Day of the Doctor by Stephen Moffat, and Twice Upon a Time by Stephen Moffat. I thought, for like the first batch of release of these books, Christmas Invasion was an odd choice. But there you go. I did buy them, well, I've got them all here. But obviously this review is going to be for Rose, so that's what I'm going to be talking about. But I do have the others, which I will hopefully get to at some point. But yeah, I got these all today, and I read Rose today. It's quite something, it's quite the adventure. I could barely put it down. So yeah, those are the 4 new Who stories that have been novelised, and hopefully they'll do more, because I'd really love to see some novelisations of some of my more favourite stories. But yeah, this is all about Rose by Russell T Davies. Obviously he wrote the episode and he did also write the novelisation, which is very exciting. Stephen Moffat also wrote the novelisation for Day of the Doctor, which is the 50th anniversary special. He also wrote Christmas Invasion, while written by Russell T Davies, was novelised by Jenny T Colgan, who has a history ever since 2012 of writing original Doctor Who books, so she's not new to Doctor Who. And Twice Upon a Time, while originally written by Stephen Moffat, has been adapted by Paul Cornell for a novel, and he has a history of Doctor Who. He's written original books himself, but he also wrote some TV stories. He wrote Father's Day, and he wrote Human Nature and Family of Blood, which was based on the book Human Nature, which Paul Cornell himself also wrote. So that's quite cool. But yeah, those are the 4 stories out at the minute. But I'm only going to really be talking about Rose, because I think it makes sense for me to read and review them in chronological order. But yes, this review is going to be... It seems weird to say this is going to be a spoiler-free review, because I'm not sure anyone's going to watch this if they haven't already seen Rose, the TV story, which is disgustingly 13 years old. What the hell? I was I 8? Yeah, I was 8 when Rose first aired. Disgusting. But yeah, it's going to be fairly spoiler-free, because obviously I imagine most of you watching this will know what happens in the story Rose. But there are like a few extra surprises, characters, changes in the actual novel itself that I'm not going to spoil. So you don't have to worry about that. And an additional factoid for you, it's 197 pages, this particular one. There's the cover, it looks lovely. And the blurb reads, in a lair somewhere beneath central London, a malevolent alien intelligence is plotting the end of humanity. Shop window dummies that can move and kill are taking up key positions, ready to strike. Rose Tyler, an ordinary Londoner, is working her shift in a department store, unaware that this is the most important day of her life. She's about to meet the only man who understands the true nature of the threat facing Earth. A stranger who will open her eyes to all the wonder and terror of the universe. A time traveller in time and space, known as the Doctor. This novel is based on the Doctor Who story, which was originally broadcast on 26th of March 2005, featuring the 9th Doctor as played by Christopher Eccleston and his companion Rose Tyler. So yeah, it's a pretty, in terms of like a novel, I think 197 pages isn't that bad at all. I read it in a couple of hours, and that was with breaks to eat and stuff. So I'm gonna kind of split the review into 3 sections. Things I really liked, kind of things that were okay, that I feel mixed about, and then things I didn't like about this particular adaptation. And it's not like it's very strange, this experience, because it's not like I'm reviewing the episode of Rose itself, because there were things I didn't like about Rose that the novelisation fixes, and there are things I liked about Rose that the novel doesn't do very well. So it's very strange kind of reviewing a book of a TV episode. But anyway, I'm going to just try and desperately go through all of these horrendously written notes. I felt really bad about using this notebook. It looks so nice. I normally buy like really nice notebooks then never use them because they just looked so nice. But you know, I thought because this is a Doctor Who video I should do that. I'm also going to try my absolute best to not need to do much editing for this review. So that's probably why I'm going to be leaving in a lot of rambling. I apologise. But anyway, stuff I liked. The narrative of the whole story is very, very easy to follow. I am going to also open the pen so I can tick things off. I think just watching any of Russell T Davies is... That's a weird word, Davies is? Yeah. Watching any of his episodes, or any TV book work he's done in the past, he obviously is a very talented writer, and it was very easy to follow the story. It helps that he had the starting point of the episode, I think, and I think he definitely chose, for the most part, the right aspects and elements of the episode to flesh out a bit more. And speaking of that, the fleshing out of the characters in the story, I think he did very well. For the most part, there were some characters I didn't really like what he did with. But the first character I do want to talk about is Wilson. And if you're just like a casual watcher and you're like, Wilson, who the hell is that? That is the guy who is killed off before the story even begins on TV, who Rose goes down the basement to give the lottery money to. She's asking after him. When the Ortons all come to life, she meets a doctor, and the story begins. Yeah, basically the very start of the book is a little brief chapter about Wilson, and he's fleshed out a lot more. We learn a lot about him, and he's not a very nice man. That's all I will say. He's not a good person at all, but I love what they did with his character. I love how they fleshed him out, so much so that I kind of wish we'd seen him like actually in the episode. And that's what I really like about this novelisation, is because it is coming from Russell T Davies himself. These must have been the thoughts and stuff he was having writing the script for the first time. He knew where these characters were going to go and what their backstories were, but he just didn't have the time or maybe even the budget to explore it. So yeah, Wilson is a very, very interesting character, even though he's only in like one little chapter of the book right at the start. But he's a very interesting man with a very interesting past and character. I like that a lot. Jackie got a bit of fleshing out. I've always really liked Jackie, anyway. But I think this novelisation really helps. While it exposes a lot of her flaws, she's not always a very nice person. We do highlight that she has her moments, and she actually does have a really kind heart. And she's not in it a lot at all. I don't think she really has that much extra material. We do see a bit more of her during like the Orton attack at the end, when she's like running around and about to be killed by like the brides and stuff. We see a bit more of her there, and a bit more after her phone call with Rose at the end of the episode. But overall we don't see a lot more of her. But we still get a better idea of who she is, I think, than the TV story offered us. Now we come to, for me, one of the stars of the novel, which is Mickey. He gets a lot of backstory in the book. We learn so much more about him and his past and his family, and it's tragic, it really is. You feel really bad for Mickey. We kind of learn why he puts up with Rose, and the reason why he broke my little heart. And we also get to meet a lot of Mickey's friends, which is quite interesting. They're not in it a hell of a lot either, but it's nice that we see a bit more of Mickey's inner circle, how he works and ticks. And he's actually in a band with a couple of his friends, which is quite nice. However, I will talk about it a bit more later. One of my biggest problems, or things that I found was a mixed bag with the novel, is the references to other stories and other characters, and the whole canon and stuff in general. I would just say the band come up with a name seemingly out of thin air. That's quite the reference to Doctor Who, the new series. Some people are going to absolutely love it, and I understand that some people will find this really great and will find it a hilarious and brilliant reference. For me, I felt it was a bit too much and kind of takes me out of the story a bit. There are a lot of the references do kind of take me out of the story, which I didn't really like. Some of them are done very well, but it's the subtle references that are the most effective for me. But yeah, I think Mickey fared very, very well from being in the novelisation. He gets a lot to do. And not just normal Mickey. Auton Mickey as well, which is another big positive for me. I can't believe I'm saying this, but my favourite thing about this novelisation was Plastic Auton Mickey. Absolutely hilarious. I was cackling away at some of those moments with Auton Mickey. He gets a bit more, I don't want to say screen time because it's a book, but he gets a bit more screen time than you might expect. And Russell T Davies kind of subverts our expectations of Auton Mickey's role in the story at certain parts. Because obviously we think we know exactly what's going to happen because we've seen the episode. But he kind of plays on that a bit, subverts our expectations, but it also doesn't really affect the narrative as a whole. So it's very cleverly done. But Auton Mickey is the big highlight for me. Absolutely hilarious the way that he's used, and his conversations. He has a little like extra conversation with the Doctor in the TARDIS console when he's getting plugged in. It's so good. Yeah, Auton Mickey, amazing. Another big positive for me was the adding of elements to the story that went unexplained in the TV episode. One of my biggest complaints with Rose, the TV story, is the anti-plastic. Like, where does it come from? What's it made of? How do we, get that? And so you just gloss over the explanation for it, and it has always annoyed me. So thankfully, the novelisation does add a tiny little line, kind of explaining a bit more about what it actually is. Not where he got it from or anything, which is a bit annoying. You can assume he made it. We didn't get as much explanation for that as I would have liked, but we did get some, so I like that. And we also got an explanation for why the nesting consciousness looks like it does in the story. Because obviously in the classic series, in Spearhead from Space, it has like tentacles and all sorts, and it looks very different. We get an explanation for that, that makes sense. And how it kind of found its way to that little base underground thing that we see in the TV story. So it fills in a lot of gaps that I really appreciated, and obviously when you have like a 45-minute episode, and it's the 45-minute episode that brought Doctor Who back, so you have a lot to like get done and introduce. It's nice that we have a novelisation to expand on that. So that was great. I love the descriptions. Russell T Davies has the perfect balance of not under-describing, so you don't really get stimulated from your imagination, you can't really picture it, and he doesn't go too far and just have pages and pages explaining what Rose's eyelashes look like or something. I think he perfectly balanced the description, so it didn't like halt the novel or the pace. Also the humour. For me, every single thing that I could tell was meant to be funny, I found funny. I really liked that. None of it really fell flat for me, which I really enjoyed and appreciated. I think that's the sign of a talented writer. Also, the Doctor as a character is another big takeaway for me. There were a couple of lines in there I felt like I couldn't imagine him saying, but overall I think the Ninth Doctor was a hell of a lot of fun in this novelisation, as he is in the TV show. He's brilliant. And we kind of get an explanation for if he's like never seen his face before, as we kind of see in Rose when he first looks in the mirror. How has he already done all those, like the picture of him on the Titanic and stuff like that? We get those gaps are filled in, and I really like that. So yeah, the Doctor was brilliant. Also the world building. Again, a novel can do this easier. We see some extra characters during the Auton attack and what it's like for them. We see the worldwide consequences of the alien invasion that we couldn't really see in the episode, probably for budget reasons. So we kind of see how it affects the rest of the world at the same time, which I really enjoyed. And then, aside from Auton Mickey, my other big favourite thing I loved about the novel was an extra scene that we got with the Doctor and Rose that's set in between them like grabbing hands and running off after they discovered the London Eye is like the key to where the nesting is, and actually getting to the nesting. We get a bit in between that, and it's really cool. Basically, Rose is kind of thinking about how the Autons kind of blend in and how they disguise themselves so well, and like if they're shop window dummies, how can they walk about the streets? And the Doctor explains that they can still have perfect copies of people, as we saw with Mickey. And then the first thing that springs to Rose's attention are all like the street performers in London. You know, you see like those living statues. So you, like people there with like a cap so you can put money in, doing all these poses, just staying still for hours and hours. And obviously some of those are Autons, and I thought that was such a clever idea, and I kind of wish we saw that in the actual episode, because, oh god, that would be creepy as hell. I loved that. If they ever bring the Autons back for a proper story, I'd love them to do like the living statues in London, all those kind of performer people. So we had a really creepy addition there that I really, really enjoyed. That whole sequence I loved. Yeah, those are all my big positives for the novel as a whole. I do have a couple of things that I have mixed feelings about. I like some elements of it, I don't like some others. And as I have already mentioned, one of those things is the references to classic series or other New Who stories, either before or after Rose. Other Doctors, other characters, stuff like that. There are some surprise characters you may not have expected to be in Rose that I really liked. There are some really subtle references that I really enjoyed to classic series stories. In that scene I mentioned with the street performers, like the living statues, that I really enjoyed. One of them's like holding out a dandelion as it's like advancing towards the Doctor and Rose, which is a really nice reference to Terror of the Autons. So that was really cool. I like that little reference. But then we also have references that kind of take you away from the moment. And like in Clive's like bunker or shed, whatever, and he has all the pictures of like future Doctors, and then we see descriptions of Doctors that haven't happened yet. And I wouldn't mind like seeing future Doctors. Like we see Jodie Whittaker, she gets like a little mention of this woman in braces and stuff running around. I don't mind that because we know Jodie Whittaker is coming. But then we get descriptions of Doctors that haven't happened yet, and I just feel like that's a bit... that kind of grates on me a bit. Some people won't mind, but for me, I don't know, not really my cup of tea. So yeah, there are a lot of references to other stories and characters. Some of them are really nice. Some aren't as subtle. Some are subtle as a brick to the face, but still kind of work. Some are as subtle as a brick to the face, and it really freaking hurts. So yeah, that's one thing I'm kind of having mixed feelings about. Another thing is the changing of some dialogue. Some lines are just completely changed, almost for no reason at all. It doesn't really change much, so like why bother changing it at all? Some lines have been changed and they sound better, which I don't mind. But then sometimes they like change what characters say what in the scene, and you know, we see Rose kind of work out how the TARDIS works very, very quickly, and the Doctor doesn't need to tell her any of the stuff he tells her in the story, which is very strange. And it also does borrow some scenes from other stories in conversations. It borrows a lot from the last scene from The End of the World, in a scene in the novel. I don't mind because it kind of works, it kind of flows when they do that, but at the same time, if they're going to adapt other stories as novels in the future, are we going to get those scenes? It feels like a bit pointless stealing from them, and yeah. So it took a bit from The End of the World, and it also took a line from Boomtown about walking past the TARDIS, which is one of my favourite moments in Boomtown. So if they ever did release a novelisation of that, is it going to have the same impact? I don't know. That's kind of a nitpicky thing, I know, but that's just something that bugged me. And the final thing I'm kind of mixed about is the handling of Rose as a character. I I know there are a lot of people out there who love Rose and adore her. There are a lot of people out there who absolutely detest her and think she's a bitch. And I think at certain moments, depending on what the scene requires and who's writing her, she's both of those things. She's a very nice person, and she's also a bitch. And it is strange in the novelisation. There are moments in the show where you watch it and think, God, Rose, you're a bit of a bitch there. That is kind of fixed in the novel, and she's not that bad. Like the very end, where she runs off with Mickey. Not with Mickey, she runs off from Mickey with the Doctor. That's been changed to make it seem a bit nicer, of a goodbye. And also, there are moments where she comes off a lot worse in the novel than she did in the scene of the episode, which is kind of strange that happened. But yeah, I feel like there isn't a lot of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. I want to say continuity, but I don't think that's quite right. Maybe consistency. There's not a lot of consistency with Rose. I think that's just a flaw of the character as a whole, if anything. But that comes across in the novel as well. I think that's it for things I had mixed feelings of. So things I didn't like. I need to be careful how I word this one. It feels like Russell T Davies is quite pressured into representing every aspect of the human race in every single way possible in such a short space of time. And there are moments where it feels very forced into the story just for means of representation. And I'm glad there's representation in there. I think it takes away from the overall story and it just halts the pace. Obviously this is a product of 2005, so I'm glad they're kind of updating it to 2018. But do it in a way that doesn't detract from the story. Sometimes it does that, sometimes it doesn't. This is a very random thing that some people will probably really enjoy. I didn't like. One of the Autons is a dog, and I just cannot picture that at all. I think it was a plastic dog that was in a display, or maybe one of those guide dog donation bins where you put the money in and stuff, and it's a plastic dog. That's one of the Autons that came to life and attacked Clive's family. And Clive's wife just kicks it in the face and sends it flying, and that's the last we see of it. It's a very strange random addition, and it doesn't really do much. Yeah, that was a bit weird. I've already mentioned the whole band name thing reference. Yeah, some of the character arcs, I want to say, feel a bit weird. Well, obviously we know Clive, who I will talk about again in a minute, the kind of conspiracy theorist Rose talks to about the Doctor. We know he dies in Rose, he gets shot in front of his wife and kids. Whoops. That's also a bit of a change in the novel, because he actually sends his wife and kids away before he's killed in the novel. And yeah, the consequences of that, or I will say, his death is brutal. The way Russell T Davies words it is probably my favourite line in the whole novel. I want to try and find it now. Let's see. I know it's chapter 16. There we go. Right, out of context, one of the lines will sound a bit weird, but just bear with me. But Clive Finch stood his ground. Anything to buy his family a few more seconds. He held his breath and puffed out his chest and closed his eyes. Somewhere in the back of his head, he thought, like father, like son. Then the back of his head was gone. Brutal! I love it! That's probably my favourite section in the whole book. I thought that was so well written. Yeah, that death was awesome. Anyway, as a result of that death, the way they wrap up the story with his wife and kids, his wife in particular, when we see them again, and he writes about them again at the end of the novel, where they go with the wife as a character in particular, in a very brief little moment, feels very strange, because we know we're never going to get a conclusion to that story, we're never going to see her again. They're just not mentioned again after the episode of Rose. So it feels weird that they conclude the story with Clive's wife in a very strange way. I don't want to say how, but it's weird for me. And finally, it's going back to like the fleshing out of a character. For me, they flesh out Clive a lot. I like so much of it, but it's just killed by one key thing. To do with Clive, well, the reason why Clive got interested in the Doctor and how he started researching all of this. And it is the most shoehorned in reference to Doctor Who and classic series I've ever encountered. It is so shoehorned in, and for me, the fact that Clive's inspired by a certain thing that's a very shoehorned and forced reference to classic series Doctor Who, the fact that he's like influenced by that to start researching the Doctor and all that makes him a far less interesting character to me. I was very disappointed when I read that. Obviously, if you like classic references and links like that, you'll love it. But for me, that made Clive a lot less interesting of a character, because his motivation felt very forced and kind of an out-of-nowhere reference to classic Doctor Who. But yeah, that's the only like additional character like padding and stuff that I wasn't really a big fan of. And I believe that's it. I think that's everything. So there are a lot more like positives to mixed views I have on the novel compared to bad things. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was brilliant. Very well written and well paced. Obviously I read it all in, well, today. I got it today, I read it today. Which is very, very good. I love reading anyway. I read it a lot. So I will tend to read a book in the day quite often. But I barely put it down once I started it. It was so well written. It does feel very weird reading like a Doctor Who book that's actually based on a story. I've never read any of the other Target novelisations because I haven't seen a lot of the classic series yet. I want to watch those stories and then read the Target novelisations. And I'm still only on... I've seen a lot of classic stories like dotted about here and there, but I have started it right from the beginning, and I'm only on Hartnell's second season at the minute. So yeah, it does feel weird having this novelisation to read based on a story I've already seen. It feels very strange, but in a good way. And I hope they continue to release more of these. The Doctor's Wife is my favourite episode of all time, Doctor Who. I would love to see a novelisation of that. What else? All the regeneration stories I love. I'd basically like all the Matt Smith era to be novelised, because Matt Smith's the best, as you can probably tell, since he's right here. But yeah, 11's my favourite Doctor. There's so many stories I'd love to see novelised. Definitely. And I think Rose is definitely a very good kind of start chronologically. It made sense that this would be one of the first ones they novelised from the new series. And it does get me very, very excited to read the other three in my possession. Yeah, overall I would definitely recommend it. I thought it was brilliant. Everyone has different tastes. Some of the stuff I didn't like, you probably won't. Some of the stuff I did like, a lot of people might hate, some people might absolutely detest Autumn Mickey in this, but I just absolutely loved him. So funny. Anyway, overall, it was a very successful novelisation. It did a great job of retelling this story and giving new life to it and making you think about it in new ways and making you feel different things for different characters in ways you hadn't considered before. And it makes me really want to rewatch Rose now and maybe see it in a different way. I don't know. I might even do that. I might do a series where I review the novelisation first and then I do a reaction to that episode and see if I can give some commentary on it in new ways. If that's something people are interested in me doing, I don't know. It would be fun to react to Doctor Who. Anyway, yeah, I really liked this novelisation. I thought it was really, really good. And the few things I really didn't like don't take too much away from it for me to not enjoy it as a whole. And I would definitely recommend you go out and read it. You might find a whole new appreciation for the stories. I kind of want novelisations for episodes I didn't like as well, because maybe that will help me see them in a different way. Who knows? I hope they do release more, and I'm very excited to read more because Rose was so good. Definitely go out and buy it. I think, yeah, well the price says $6.99, but it was on Amazon for like a £5, so not bad at all for a couple of hours of reading. Yeah, that was Rose. Really, really good novelisation. Definitely go out and get yourself a copy. I have no idea how long this review is. It feels like it's been very long. I apologise. If you're still here, congratulations. You honestly do deserve a medal and your weight in gold. But yeah, that's been my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've read the novelisation, let me know what you think, or what you just think of the TV episode itself. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. See ya.